Good morning. This is Angela Coulter, your Consciousness Transformation Ascension Guide, originator of Trinity Energy Progression, bringing you this week's Living the Shift. We have had quite a couple of weeks in terms of shifting, in terms of what's going on. I know I've worked with a lot of people who've called me out of the blue and they're like, help. So I thought this was important because I have had a couple of things that have been questions of mine that have just been sort of, sitting there, and I've been waiting, like, how do I change this? Why is this happening?
We have had
quite
a couple of weeks in terms
I gotta change this, sorry. I'm trying to turn off my sound, which I always forget to
shifting
do
in terms of what's going on.
before we start, which is, always preferable. Anyway, okay. Let's go back to this, because this way I can not see on here who's on, but I can see on my phone. Okay. So, let's start again. So we've had a lot of shifting going on the last several weeks, and there was something that has been bugging me and bugging me and bugging me. So I have now been self-employed, have been doing this. Well, I've been doing this work for nine and a half years full time, but I've been self-employed. I left corporate like 14 years ago, right? And so I've been living here. I've been working at home. My office has always been at home, even when I had, like, say I had an herb nursery for a while. Like, I had a property next door to my old house, and I would, like, have my home office. My office was at home. And so I got used to always having some space that was my own. And so, and not only the space, but the house, because even when my kids were still in school, they were gone for, majority of the day. So that was when I would get all my really focused office work done. And then later on, when I was seeing clients and stuff like that, either I would have clients out of the house when people were home, or, people at the house in my office. So I've been very used to that and very used to that space. And so for the past, what is it, since March, right? That's when all the lockdowns started. We're in August now, so that's 5 months. So for the past 5 months, I've had, my husband's working at home. My daughter and her boyfriend live, and we have a basement apartment in our house, and he's been working at home. She's had less hours than she used to. And then my youngest just graduated college, and she moved home. And we all have separate parts of the house. I'm so fortunate and so thankful that we have all our own parts of the house. But the challenge is that I haven't been used to having somebody around all the time. Now we all have our own offices or spaces. And so what's been perplexing me has been why I have felt so drained. I felt so, like, for 5 months, it's been distracted, not as focused. And I was, like, judging myself for that and going, well, how can I not, like, why can I not do this? Like, why is this such a big deal? Because I still have my own space, but it's just that people are present in the house. And so why is that such a thing? Because it was fine. And then, and then every once in a while I just have this spike of irritation or whatever. So, let me rewind. I'm going to put that on the shelf for the moment, because this is all going to come together, and it's going to be really important for the topic we're going to talk about today. Well, it is the topic we're talking about today, but I wanted to give you the background. So when I first had my Grand Awakening, now I've always been openly empathic. I learned how to, so when I was very young, I had a very volatile home situation. And so I learned very early how to feel people's energies, feel people's emotions. And I wasn't even a conscious thing. I would just feel the room. I would feel somebody. I had very volatile home. So it was very beneficial for me to feel out how somebody was before I interacted with them, so that it was like self-preservation, right? Many of us had that. I've had that. And so I learned at a very early age, not even consciously, how to shut down, how to accommodate how others felt around me. And then eventually, like when I hit puberty, it was very uncomfortable. So then I just became sort of like a steel trap, just sort of shut everything down. But I could still manage. I was great in corporate in management because I managed people really well because I could feel them out and all that kind of stuff. Anyhow, so the point of all this is that when I first had what I call my grand awakening in like 2009, it was like I pulled out the partition, not just like I could feel the emotions of what was going on around me and feel people out through a filter, right? And then, but when I had what I call my grand awakening, it was like, I had the full Kundalini opening and all this kind of stuff. It was like I pulled out this huge partition, and then the entire universe came like swooshing in like a tsunami, right? And it was like I could hear thoughts and understandings and ideas. I was so barraged. So not only could I feel feelings, but I could hear thoughts. And it was so disconcerting and overwhelming that the first thing that I wanted to, because quite honestly, here's the thing. Many people like get into this whole thought of like, oh, well, somebody could read my mind. It's like, no, the thing is this, that most of us have no desire to hear the chatter that's going on in other people's heads. Because we have enough chatter that's going on in our own, right? And that was really what I thought is, oh my God, I have so much going on in my own, like what's going on, blah, blah, blah. I don't want to hear everybody else's thoughts. So the first thing I learned was how to filter that out, right? How to keep that to a dull roar. This is all related. Hold on with me. I'll get to the point. It'll come together. And so the other thing, so here's another seemingly disparate point, was I had for a period of time, for like several years now, I keep on having these dreams about fish where I have fish in an aquarium and then they're like swimming out of the aquarium and they're like swimming in the air around me. Or I have like a whole place, like a studio full of aquariums that, I've forgotten about, right? And then I like in the dream, I'm like, oh my God, I've forgotten about it. And then there are all these fish tanks and like there are these dead fish. And then there's these fish that have changed tanks and the other ones that have like bred. And it's like always sort of a mess. And I'm just like, oh, well, it sort of took care of itself. But now I've got to clean this up because I've held them, like, because they were all in their tanks, right? And it was my responsibility to take care of them. And I've always been like, what are those about? Because my dreams are always so perceptive and they always have such clear messages. Well, most of the time. And so that's been sort of sitting on the shelf too, right? So this all came together this week because on Monday when I did my share, my podcast with Sarah Sieg Avignoni, we talked about, and I cannot remember now, I'm totally blanking. I'm going to check my notes here. Oh yeah. Transcending all of the tasks, the 3D things that we think we have to do that will actually distract us from the higher picture, right? So we did that, and we did that in our podcast, Ascended World. So you should go back and listen to that if you haven't. It's on the Ascended World page. And then it was like the next day, and I was like, okay, and so I focused on that and my creation, all kind of stuff. The next day, it was this huge, and then I had an experience in my house that Monday too, that had to do with this whole thing about being in my house with other people, working here, right? And so then I was again asking, well, why is this a thing? Okay, wait, there's one other thing that seems disparate that's going to come together. Many of us have had this too, frequencies in the ears and the head for, I don't know, several years also. And it's sort of like a thrumming, like like that kind of thing. And many are thinking, oh, I have tinnitus, I have whatever. It's a frequency thing, right? And I've been asking like what that's about too. And I have shifted a lot of that so that it's not distracting anymore. So what finally came to me in meditation after all of this was this understanding of it was like, oh, it was actually in a discussion I had because we were talking about it. And then I said, oh, when I first had that explosion of the multiverse coming in openly into my consciousness of remembrance, and I my first thing was to tune it out. Well, what do we tend to do? When we try to tune something out, we push it away, right? So basically, what I saw that I had done was I had taken like a volume control that was at 10 and I turned it down to about a 2. So it's not that I turned it off entirely because I didn't want to, yeah, I felt like I didn't want to turn off the connection, and turning it off entirely would be cutting off the connection. So all of that chatter, all of that stuff that was coming into me openly, I turned down so that I could control it, right? Well, right away, as soon as we say the word control, it goes to ego, right? Because ego is all about control. And so all these years, it has been sitting there like buzzing in the background. And I've learned how to manage, and I could pick and choose, and I can actually tune in to specific frequencies. When I work with clients, I tune into their higher self, and then we also step out of separation into oneness, and then I see the whole picture. And so it's very focused that I can do that. But I've been having this message also for about a year that I'm not allowing myself to truly embrace my entire divinity. And I didn't know what that meant either. There's a lot of this stuff. So what all came together was, what happens is this stuff, I've also noticed that I've been clenching my teeth at night when I've been sleeping, off and on. So what I understood, all in one big download, which is how it happens. And sometimes I swear my higher self is like, okay. People think, and I was saying this, people think that I always like have all the answers and stuff. And I laugh because I was like, yeah, ask my higher self that. Because my higher self was like, oh, okay. How many ways can we show ourselves this before we get the remembrance, right? And so, good morning, Laurel. Good morning, Kathy. And so what I was shown was that I have filtered, and like, because what we tend to do in trying to control is we limit, but it's not that we actually eliminate everything, right? So what happens is I've put all that buzz of the thoughts and the chatter and whatever of everything around me, and I've put it into like down, I've turned the volume down to like 2. But what happens is it's sort of like the water drip torture, right? If you have this dripping water all the time, right? It's not that intrusive. You can tune it out, right? There's somebody I know who has, that I've been working with, that has they actually call it something, where certain noises will just like actually physically hurt them, right? Right. So I've had this buzz going on because I've at some level set myself to control it for so long. And what is happening is, I've been I consciously tune into the collective, which is like, okay, so I'm controlling it, but I'm still tuning in the collective. And at some level, I believe that my family, that I shouldn't turn my family's chatter down to a 2. So I don't allow myself to like even get into that background. So now I have multiple levels of that chatter coming into me energetically. And they've been sitting there, and it's been grating on me. Like I said, it's been more, the longer we go, the more it was like sort of getting on my nerves. And then, like I said, I noticed I started clenching my teeth and all that kind of stuff. And having dreams about bugs ringing the doorbell. So funny, buzz, right? Buzz. And then I wake up in the middle of the night, and we have like, speakers throughout our house, our sound system. And I'd hear this little like faint crackling that nobody else seems to hear. And it's like buzz, right? And then it's like, oh, I finally get it. So I feel like I can't turn my family stuff down. But then the message wasn't that. The message was, why are you turning it all down? Which then the ego freaks out and goes, well, what do you mean, why am I turning it all down? Because when it first came into me, it was so overwhelming. I thought I just wanted to curl up into a fetal position, because it was like everything. And the answer is like, you are everything. So why do you deny yourself part of who you are? And then I was like, well, how do I function if I allow the thoughts and chatter all around me to just be at a 10 volume all the time? Like, how do you even focus? And it's like, well, it's how much you believe it's in existence, or how much you believe that it has to affect you, or there's so many different things, right? So it's taken me, that was Monday, this is Thursday. It's taken me the last 3 days of constant like rechecking, going in and meditating and being okay, like whatever adjustments I have to do. The first day was really challenging because my guidance was open it all up. open up the floodgates and allow it all to come in again because you know how to deal with this now. And so it's like, okay, I know I didn't at the time, 11 years ago. And so I was like, okay, so, and first I'm like trying to, just turn the faucet a little bit. And, and, and it was okay. It got me disconcerted. And then I could tell that a part of me was like, no, I'm not going to let anything more open up. Like, this is as far as we go. So then I've done some sessions. I've done some share sessions, some share energy sessions with some friends this week and focused on this. And it was funny because we went out there and she literally was standing in front of like one of those big, huge sewer doors with those big circular things that lock it. And she was just like, all right, we're opening it up. And she opened it up and it was like this flooding came through and it was intense. And it was almost painful to allow it to come through. But then it was like, okay, I'm just like going to allow and know that it doesn't have to be painful. It can be easy. This is all me. It's allowing my whole self to come through because you and I are the same. So why would I cut out even part of the multiverse, right? So the mind says, oh, that's crazy because then you become overwhelmed, you go crazy, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. What I understand the more that I sit in this, and it's important for not just me, but for everyone, because so many of us are doing the same thing, who are openly intuitive, who have been doing intuitive work, psychic work, spiritual work, whatever, and empathic work, whatever you want to call it, whatever label you want to give it, right? We want to, we tend to learn, so a lot of people, when they first open up, what do they do? Oh, let's put a bubble up to protect you. And then it was funny because in the very beginning of me doing my own work, self-work and stuff, my guidance was no, take the bubble down, because we're focusing on shifting beyond separation and duality to be able to transcend it and to be able to live within it, but transcend it simultaneously. And when we do that, if we do that with a bubble, we're still perpetuating separation. So in essence, even though I had changed all that for all this other stuff energetically, like I don't have any bubbles around me. It's like I hold my own vibration and everybody's welcome as long as they'll match that vibration. There's a lot of different ways that you can do that energetically so that you don't get dragged down or dragged down or however you want to look at it. Except I still had that control in place about all the buzzing, right? All the ideas and understandings, the thoughts, the chatter and stuff that was going on through the multiverse. Good morning, Gloria. And so my ego had convinced me, oh yeah, don't worry about that because you got all this, right? But that was the message I was getting is, well, you're still limiting yourself because you're never going to access the whole of your divine self until you open all the floodgates and you allow it all to come through. So, and it's only the ego that believes that it's painful. It's only the ego that believes that it has to be overwhelming. It's all the beliefs of how it has to happen, how it has to feel. Those are all beliefs and we can change them. So I've been sort of because my whole thing is I'm so out of practice. We're all out of practice of allowing the entire multiverse to simply flow through us all the time and be us. That it's been, like I said, 3 days of constant adjustments of, okay, well, because what I found the first 24 hours was that the things that I still, actually it was great and productive because the things that I still feared that I didn't recognize within myself because I just sort of pushed them down into that little buzz were coming up. And I was seeing through the eyes of someone who was planning to kill somebody. And then there was and I would do this in my sleep, and then I'd wake up and be like, oh, this is what I didn't want, right? Hitting the darkness, hitting the deeper dark parts of us collectively. And then I was like, oh, but here's the thing. What I don't want, that's an egoic judgment. And the thing is to say it's all perfect, it's all divine, and that I can let it all flow through me seamlessly and yet still focus on my wholeness and still hold that vibration of this is what I am in wholeness. And everything, the chatter, the information can flow through me openly and freely. And infinitely, and I can handle it, and it's easy, right? And I know how to manage it. I know how to exist and how to actually do from it, from being in that. And so many might feel like that's really scary because they're like, oh no, that would be too overwhelming. Oh, like, because you hear all this, oh, I'm so empathic. It's like, well, yeah, I know. Well, like, we all are to some degree. It's all who's openly so and who manages it differently or who has lessons to learn from it. And then it's how to master it, how to master our connection. That's what this is about. So we have a lot of huge, icky, ugly, what we call ugly stuff has come to the surface collectively. And so right now you would say, many would say, oh my gosh, no, I'm not going to open up those floodgates because I don't want that coming through me. And the key is to say, to be able to set ourselves to trust in our own ability to say, okay, I'm just going to set my space so that, yeah, okay, it'll come through me and I can observe it. And it will, yeah, I can observe it in transcendence as it flows through without it, holding on. Because now I accept it all as me and I accept it all to flow through me. I'm allowing all of that buzz. And it's not that like I said, I have no desire to read somebody, like to listen to somebody's thoughts. Unless, like I said, we're working together and then I'm working with their higher selves. And it's not that I hear their thoughts, but I just see the whole picture. But that's no different. And actually, this will allow it even more. And in this, now what happens is I can find my center and my silence that I thought was gone because I was wondering why I couldn't focus and had distractions, even in my office by myself, even though like with other people in the house. And then I was like, oh, well, this makes so much sense. And as soon as I started to embrace that, and then it's like, oh, no, okay, I'm going to tweak this and I'm going to tweak that because something will pop up and be like, okay, so what is there for me to change here? In opening all those floodgates, I have found more peace and centeredness this week than I have in the past 5 months, probably in the past years. And clear guidance, crystal clear. And I'm not sure, like, I can't even tell you exactly how that worked by opening all the floodgates, that it actually all became so much clearer and quieter. But it's almost that because like in holding it back, like I was saying, there's sort of like a buzz that's been in the background all this time. So many of us have these frequencies in our ears. That's part of the collective buzz. And that's part of our shifting energetically. It's all tied together with vibration and frequency, and we are shifting to different levels. And as we're doing that, it's what I'm understanding is it's really crucial and important for us to accept the whole of the frequency that we are shifting from to shift to a completely new one, right? And so there's no need for spiritual elitism anymore to say, oh, well, I just don't want to be around this vibration anymore. Or, like, oh, I just avoid this person or I avoid this place or this area because it has that kind of vibration in it. And it's like, well, no, because that's all me, right? And we've been talking about that for so long. But when you actually embrace it to say, okay, and I can walk through this and be just as enlightened and in remembrance through what we look at and perceive as the dingiest, dirtiest, darkest places that we've created. And when we can say, I can walk through that and get just as much in, I can hold my vibration in love and inclusion and wholeness through all of that. I have no fear of it because it is me, and I know that it will simply just pass through as I perceive it in transcendence. And when we can do that, then every place that we are is sacred. Every moment is clear and centered and peaceful. And so, yeah, I'm still working all that out because it comes and goes and I feel like, oh, I've got this. But I will say that I have felt clearer and more centered in this. And so this is what I was guided to come on here and talk about because it is really so, so important for us to get past this. And Kathy says, I first heard the buzz as a child. Yeah, Yeah, a lot of us have, and we just haven't recognized like what is that, right? Um, but it all comes together. Oh, and the fish, right? So go back to the fish dreams, right? The fish dreams had to do with that was the buzz in the background that I was ignoring, right? That I have been consciously choosing to ignore, and having having the fish like floating around in the air around me was like I was afraid to, like in the dreams I was always afraid to go near them because I didn't want to hurt them, because they're all in the air and I didn't want to accidentally like hit them or or squash them or something. And that's the thing. If we are pushing something out and we're saying, okay, I don't want to feel other people's feelings, I don't want to hear other people's chatter, I don't want to hear all of these things from other dimensions, right? When we do that and we have all these like conditions down, then it's fear, and at some level it's a fear and it's an exclusion in the ego to say, I don't want this because it's not a part of me, except it is a part of us. And so embracing that is then it's an embracing of, it's like, so like literally when I have something come up now, this in the last 3 days, it's been, okay, I'm going to accept this and let it flow through me. And I'm going to stay transcendent and an observance to it with love and know that it's a part of me as part of the whole. Um, and it's funny because I have actually had gotten the whole thrumming, the sound in my ear, my head to subside for about, I don't know, like it's funny because one day I realized, oh my God, I haven't heard it for a while. And it's been coming back intermittently. But this week, was it last night? I woke up and I was rolling over and I noticed it. And I was like, yeah, well, I don't need that anymore. You can just go ahead and flow through. And then it just sort of disappeared. And it was like, whoa, that was so powerful and effortless. So the first step is to realize that we are that powerful, right? And to accept that we are not the victims of our divine abilities. Yes, because you're blocking if you deny. So it's to say, I accept and embrace and open my heart to all that possibility and open myself to allow all that to flow through in transcendence, right? It's for us to recognize that there's nothing to be dramatic about when it comes to our divine remembrance, divine abilities, that we can allow those floodgates to be opened and to not perceive that as like a painful tsunami or something that's going to be overwhelming. But it's just like when different shifts happen, we can simply set ourselves to be able to expand our ability and our consciousness to remember how to accommodate that in an easy and joyous way. And see, here's the thing. I believe from what I've been shown this week in my work, it's been that those of us like who are consciously like doing that, creating bubbles or filters or whatever, it does affect us physically eventually. And so, we talk in energy work about how all the non-physical affects the physical, and really any injury, disease, issues you have physically are all messages of what we're holding in the non-physical. So if we did that, if we looked at that and we're like, okay, well, think about the energy that we're putting into holding stuff back, like putting our arms out and saying no, because I'm afraid of it, because I'm afraid it'll overwhelm me, because I'm a victim to it, that it's more powerful than me, to allow myself, like, I'll just not be able to survive, I'll go crazy, like there's all those judgments, ego, all ego. Think about the energy when we do that we put into holding it out there, that even when we're not conscious of it. Coincidentally, I had a dream last night. I was white water rafting with my grandmother. Flow with it. She was telling you to flow with it, right? So, think about the unconscious energy that we put to it when we're holding something out here, right? And saying, no, I'm controlling it. Anytime you say the word control, it's like the surplus of energy that we have to put into maintaining separation and exclusion, because when we control something, we hold it in a place instead of letting it flow through. And so eventually, what was happening, like I said, I started clenching my teeth in my sleep, and I'm like, why am I clenching my teeth in my sleep? I'm actually not, everything's flowing, I'm pretty happy with everything except that one thing. And I'll tell you what, ever since this sort of came up, it's like, okay, well, I feel so much more relaxed, right? And I don't think I'm going to be clenching just haven't found myself, woke up knowing that my jaw had been clenched anymore since, no, it's only been 3 nights, but I don't feel like it's going to come back. So that's the thing for us to look at within ourselves. And this is really important for those of us on a very conscious path, because we do have these egoic ideas of what we have to control. Oh, I have this in control. I have controlled this, or and there are many who would do bubbles, and I haven't used bubbles or shields or anything for a really long time. And anybody who knows me knows I teach not to do that, right? Because it's all about staying connected. Well, this is another level of that. So that's the thing to look at this week. What is it that you are still holding back in your consciousness, in your spiritual practice, in your practice of, your intuitive, psychic ability, whatever you want to call it? What are you holding back that's preventing you from, that's causing you some background noise that might be getting you a little edgy, that might be affecting you even physically? And not only physically, but emotionally, mentally, or whatever. And you might not know that, might not realize that that's what it is, or you haven't been able to realize it before. But then ask yourself, ask your higher guidance, is this causing this? Because it's funny how, like I said, like 4 or 5 things just went bing, 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 bing. As soon as I saw this bigger picture of like, oh, well, these are the messages that I've been giving myself for how long? And I finally got it. And I'm, I consider myself pretty adept at listening to that. So I understand there's going to be a bit of a learning curve for us, and more of a bit of a remembering curve, as long as we open ourselves up to it. So, little tiny thing. So more on that coming, I'm sure. But thanks for joining me. We'll see you next time. Play in that this week and be conscious of it within yourself, and ask yourself, well, what if I did let everything come through? How do I do that in a way that's comfortable, that I can do that in transcendence and be in a place of love and wholeness all the time, no matter how dark or cranky or whatever it is? Because that's really where we are still, that those are the parts of us that are to come up to the surface so that we can resolve them. All right. So thanks. Hugs to you, Kathy. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. We'll see you next week. This is Angela Coulter signing off on this week's Living the Shift.